can see up top. So I can see up top, and so I can make sure that the person that is actually here has the right information. Look at how much power you have. I know. Got so mad. Yeah.
All right. Well. Hello and welcome. All right. Well. Hello and welcome to the 2025 College of the Atlantic Senior Project presentation. I am your humble and gracious host, Dominic. Thank you. Today's presentations showcase the diverse array of talents and interests of just a few of COA's graduating students. Join me as we take a journey and adventure into the minds and lives of 12 of these wonderful seniors and their projects. There will be a short break after our sixth speaker, and each speaker will take a few questions after they give their presentation. Are we ready to begin? Yes. All right, here we go. Our first speaker is Linnea Go, who hails from the west coast of Canada. Her senior project is a compilation of 9 proposals to improve waste management at COA and is titled College of the Atlantic Zero Waste Action Plan. After COA, Linnea received the Watson Fellowship and will spend the year traveling to Malaysia, Indonesia, New Zealand, Japan, Kenya, and Chile to learn about how seaweed plays a role in sustainability and community resistance. Please welcome Linnea.
Hello. For my project, I developed a zero waste action plan for COA. This project was directed by Reagan Greer from Buildings and Grounds and Alex Freed from the Post Landfill Action Network. The zero waste action plan is part of a 3-stage process. Stage 1 was completed by another student in 2020. This involved establishing a baseline of our waste management practices. Then, last winter, I worked with a current student to meet with staff, faculty, and students and develop a strategic vision. My senior project is the 3rd stage of this process, where I created a zero waste action plan. I started by collecting data and meeting with staff, faculty, and students to gather more information about our current waste management systems. Then I worked with Plan to calculate the quantities and sizes of infrastructure needed to make these projects possible at COA. When developing the proposals, I focused on creating systems that were as easy as possible for everyone involved, including the staff managing the systems and the community members using them. All of this information was used to write 9 detailed proposals and a project-wide budget. Finally, I met with many community members again to review the proposals for feedback. There are 2 scopes to this project. For Scope 1, I looked at surplus and hard-to-recycle materials. I wrote proposals to establish a central surplus and hard-to-recycle materials aggregation facility where staff and faculty would be able to reuse existing campus-owned furniture, and a proposal to make improvements to the free box. For Scope 2, I focused on single-use and everyday use materials. I wrote proposals for a reusable to-go-ware system, improving communication around food recovery, and infrastructure for an on-campus compost facility. I also developed several campus-wide proposals, including standardizing trash recycling and compost bins and signage across campus, changes in addition to policies, a proposal for zero waste events, and a plan for increased community engagement. Finally, I developed a budget that included all of the costs and savings associated with these proposals, including a 2-year staff position to lead the implementation. Some of them have very high startup costs but low maintenance, while others have very little monetary costs but will take a lot of time to set up. And the final result of my project includes both step-by-step implementation plans for all of these proposals, as well as their monetary and labor costs. In addition to developing proposals, I received grant funding to purchase stainless steel dishes and implement the reusable to-go-ware system. To use this checkout system, community members can download the Reusey app. They then scan the QR code on the dish and show it to the kitchen staff to prove that they've checked it out. And this system allows us to track who's checked out which dishes, and then people have 3 days to return them, and at the end of the term, there's a fee for anything that's not yet been returned. The program was launched at the beginning of February, and since then, we have averted 1,012 disposable dishes, saved $759 by not purchasing disposables, and prevented 529 pounds of CO2 emissions. In April, Buildings and Grounds conducted the annual waste audit, where a week's worth of discarded resources were weighed before and after they were sorted into the correct categories. In all 3 years, there has been a lot of recycling and compost found in the garbage bins, which could be mitigated by standardizing bins and signage across campus. The results also showed a decrease in the quantity of trash produced this year than in previous years, which could be attributed to the implementation of the Reusey program, as very few disposable dishes were found. However, you can see that the quantity of food waste produced this year was higher than in previous years, so it's important that we improve our compost infrastructure on campus. Therefore, I think it would be beneficial for COA to implement an on-campus in-vessel composter. I spent extra time during my project presenting this proposal to government's committees and meeting with the company that makes the composter. This is a contained composting unit that speeds up the decomposition process by manually turning, aerating, and heating up the compost. The whole process takes 3 to 6 weeks, and it is able to decompose compostable dishware. The machine that would best fit our needs is called the Rocket A900, and it can take up to 460 gallons of food waste and 460 gallons of wood chips or leaves a week. After it's processed in the in-vessel composter, the new soil needs to cure in an open pile for another 2 to 3 weeks. If you're interested in learning more about any of these proposals, here's the link with the QR code to my project. I would also like to thank Reagan and Dan for all of their support throughout this process, the Post-Landfill Action Network for their guidance, and all of the many other staff, faculty, and students who took the time to meet with me over the past year and a half. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
What was the biggest surprise that you encountered through your project?
The question was about the biggest surprise that I encountered throughout my project. I wouldn't say that I was super surprised throughout the process, but I would say that I definitely learned a lot about the way that the systems work at our school, and I assume that they're somewhat similar in other places as well. I think that it was really interesting to see all of the people that were involved and really understand the full process of things, because I think on the surface I just saw like what was working and what wasn't working, but then actually talking to people and understanding like why it wasn't working and how we could make it better, I think was definitely what I learned the most from in the process. Yes?
I wondered about why the food waste doesn't go to the farm or to the pigs or be composted in front of the farm.
The question is about why the food waste doesn't go to the farms. So we've actually done a lot of research about that in the past, and a lot of it is to do with the regulations to do with the land on the farms and the potential pests associated with food waste. So the farms, to be certified as organic, can only take their own waste from the farms. They are no longer able to take COA's food waste. And there were some complaints from some of the neighbors about the smell and the pests involved. So the benefit of this composter is that that gets rid of all of those issues, and it would really just be contained and you wouldn't be able to smell it or have animals entering it. Right.
All right, thank you, Linnea. The one thing that I do want to mention, photographs are okay during presentations as long as there is no flash. So feel free to take pictures of your friends and loved ones, just please no flash. Thank you. All right, next up we have Or Udzan Titar. Born and raised in Swaziland, which was renamed Eswatini, His senior project is a digital photographic exhibition piece that aims to record a physical collection of beetles for the Dorr Museum of Natural History into the digital space. After graduating, Orr intends to spend some time with his family while seeking employment in the U.S. in one of the many fields he is interested in, including environmental studies, conservation biology, science communication, and digital curation. Please welcome Orr.
Thank you, Dom, for the introduction. The work that I'm introducing to you today is the culmination of my education here at College of the Atlantic. Trying to decide what would best encapsulate my time here, I decided to look back on my experiences at COA. Throughout my 4 years here, I've been drawn to courses that explore our understanding of the natural world, often through the scientific lens of human nature interactions and learning. I also wanted to bring my camera into the project. A valuable tool, it has always helped me to capture memories of my experiences in a way that my brain often fails to do. Travel memories, important life moments, mundane scenes that evoke remembered emotions. These are the most important things for me to remember, and the camera helps me do that. More than just capturing memories, the camera lens offers a new viewpoint to observe the world around me. A year ago, I came across a beautiful macro bee photographs in a course I was taking. This inspired me to create a project to highlight the beauty and complexity of these small, often overlooked creatures. Through discussions with Carrie Graham, our museum director, I decided to focus on the Neville Goodwin collection of beetles. While this beetle collection resides here at College of the Atlantic, its true significance lies in its deeply personal history. This is Neville Goodwin's collection, a reflection of her lifelong fascination with the natural world. Most of these beetles were gathered by Neva herself during her early childhood, from the 1950s to the 1960s. Her passion for collecting nurtured by her father, David Rockefeller, a renowned figure and also an avid beetle enthusiast. Her collection, therefore, offers a unique glimpse into beetle diversity across various regions and time periods. My goal was to digitize and share Neva's collection, transforming physical specimens into an accessible online archive. Through high-resolution photography and an interactive map, visitors can now explore these beetles in detail, discovering their origins and appreciating the care involved in scientific collecting. By bringing this collection into the digital realm, I aim to preserve its legacy and make it a valuable resource for entomologists, educators, and nature enthusiasts alike. I began my project this February with a week at the USGS National Bee Inventory and Monitoring Lab in Laurel, Maryland. Among the many bee-related research being carried out, this lab also photographs bee specimens. In fact, that gallery of bee photographs that inspired me came out of this lab. Working with Sam Droege, the wildlife biologist who runs the place, I learned the entire process of digitizing an insect specimen. The equipment needed, the photography techniques, the post-processing efforts, these are all combined to create the stunning photographs of close-up insects. Back here at COA, I faced this challenge of recreating the equipment setup that I experienced at the Bee Lab. I built my own rig, which you can see here, and faced quite a few challenges. These specimens are uniquely challenging to light for photographs, and the programs needed to process the photography were much too much for my personal laptop to handle. But eventually I settled into a groove and set out on my long journey. The Neville Goodwin collection contains over 899 beetles, and I had planned to capture them all. However, after spending over 350 hours of dedicated work, I'd only photographed around 300 of them. So I decided to pivot. Rather, I had no choice but to pivot. Rather than every individual, I opted to capture representatives of unique specimens of beetles from each specimen box, like this one shown here. This ensured that my photographs covered at least one individual from each species in the collection. Finally, I assembled a digital exhibition that contains the collection. This website holds the photos I captured, along with the story behind the project, an interview with the collector, Neva, and a map showcasing where the beetles were collected. Now, why exactly does this project matter? Our world is always changing, and the species constantly rise and fall, especially true of the times since humans have begun reshaping our environment. Understanding these changes is crucial, and our knowledge of the world depends on our ability to observe, document, and study the organisms around us. Natural history collections serve as invaluable tools in this endeavor, preserving specimens that allow us to track biodiversity changes, environmental shifts, and species distributions over time. As many species face extinction due to habitat loss, climate change, and other human-driven factors, preserved specimens become even more important. They offer a tangible record of life on Earth, ensuring that future researchers and the public can study organisms that may no longer exist in the wild. Digitizing natural history collections is key to both their preservation and accessibility. Physical specimens are inherently vulnerable to many risks, making digital archives a useful safeguard against loss. Additionally, online collections allow anyone, anywhere in the world to access them. Digitizing collections creates a wealth of knowledge that can guide conservation efforts, deepen scientific understanding, and inspire future generations to appreciate and protect the natural world. You're welcome to follow this link on the screen to have a look at my website yourself. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Yeah?
Are you gonna get to track who watches or sees this? Do you have a sense of who's interested?
Yeah, so I can't tell the individual people and identity, but I can see the visitors to my website by daily and monthly averages and times of day. So I can see if people are visiting the website, but I can't tell who they actually are. Yeah.
Fabulous. Have you connected or you plan to connect to any of the premier entomologists in the world at different museums and make sure they know about what you've done?
So I did speak with Neva, and she told me about her father's collection, which is much larger than hers, that is currently being digitized at the Harvard Museum. And so I have considered, through Neva, reaching out to them to let them know that I've digitized David Rockefeller's daughter's collection, and it's available at our college. Thank you.
Thank you, Orr. All right. After Orr, we have Joanna Patari from Staten Island, New York. Her senior project is a journey of misunderstandings and inaccuracies in personal memory through a collection of art, photography, and creative writing entitled Archiving Memory. Through this enlargement of life presented in miniature art, hidden history becomes front-facing. After COA, Joanna plans to continue her education in library sciences and stay creative. Please welcome Joanna.
Hello all, thank you for being here. About 2 years ago, I made a miniature diorama of a hoarder's home in a slant desk, titled To Die Wearing Braces, which is about the inability to reach a goal and be forever stuck in the process. This was for an installation art class with Drew Colbert, but after some time I missed the meticulous practice of carving and painting involved in that art form, so I pulled myself back to creating miniature memories. That first project was only inspired by a personal story. It was close to something meaningful to me, but it was too personal and private to present accurately. After that, I felt the urge to build life as I actually knew it. But this impulse comes with many ethical questions of whose stories are mine to share. I wanted to preserve my truth, though I knew it would never be the truth. So I tried again. In a 1/12 scale world I made out of scrap wood, metal, fabric, a bit of 3D printing, and estate sale scouring, in November of 2024, in Thorndike Library, I shared this non-chronological history of myself in 8 dioramas. Each scene of archiving memory is based on a point in my life or what I inaccurately ascribe to my life that represents ways we form, keep, and engage with memories. Beside each display were transcripts and photos from those moments to beg questions about the picture's truth, the written truth, and the artistic truth. I meant exactly what I showed here and made clear when I was hiding. This is scene 2 out of 8 final scenes in which I address constants as the things we forget the easiest. Reliably present, I have no reason to hold on dearly to a dumpster. I walk past the same beautiful or detestable streets, and as long as they look how they did yesterday, my brain filters it out of sight. But I hate to lose parts of this world that have just as much necessity as anything else, simply because they are too consistent for me to notice. For scene 4, I dismantled a 1984 Zenith cathode ray tube TV, thankfully without radiating myself. The ray tube in the middle here is the heart, face, and most dangerous part. Working at a tiny scale, whether in miniature furniture or in heaps of scary wires, takes an inordinate amount of time and patience. All these screws and panels came out, and I expected to build a scene that was in another person's private bedroom, a scene not so unlike my original inspiration, but instead, I pulled back. It wasn't mine to share. Not everything should be archived, so I placed the scene just beyond a locked door. I often fought with my intentions and public perception in these private stories I was soon to broadcast. That's why I made 11 dioramas with 56 pages of transcript, but showed 8 of each to the public, and I'm only telling you about 4. This is scene 6, inspired by touch, smell, visionless forms of memory, things that spark nostalgia. My mother used to sit on the edge of the bathtub with me, wrapped in her arms in one of those dollar store wet to expand towels, and she would sing Scottish lullabies. We are not Scottish. But this spot also holds another memory, Hurricane Sandy and its devastation. This tiny windowless room was the safest to hide in, so while other homes flooded, I sat in the candlelit quiet, excited by the novelty of a thunderstorm. 2 incredibly different ways one place can be remembered. And water connects me and the places I have never been, but were important to a beloved distant relative. In this final scene, collaged with fire department IDs and immigration cards from Portugal and Sicily, there is a family that refuses to speak their native languages from an ocean away because of the country they live in now. I've chosen not to ask about some relatives' lives because the details might rupture the picture I've made of them. I will never know everything. I don't need to know everything. Who I am is a balancing act of every memory I've acquired. So in this project, I've set out to create my version of a comprehensive photo album and then redacted it. A photo album sits on a shelf for years before it's flipped through. It's not the remembering of the specifics that creates the comfort, but the knowledge that it exists somewhere, archived. And for the stories I was not able to get to in this amount of time, you can request photos and the transcript through Thorndike staff, and you can find these 2 pieces published in the Southern Quill magazine this year. Thank you. All right, I'll take some questions. Yes?
I happen to know that you work at the Jessup Library,
I do.
and how will that inform your future plans in library science?
Yes. So I've been working in public libraries for the past 4 years. I worked at Thorndike, I worked at Jessup, I worked in Central Florida for a bit, and I was also volunteering at the library in Connors Emerson. All of this work has inspired me just because I'm always close to the archives, but I don't have the necessary experience to work in the archives. And even Jessup does not have an archivist, so sometimes I'll go in there and just experience it and look around and see these books that we have from so long ago and not feel like I'm there to, spread that knowledge or teach that or even touch these things because that's not my forte. And so it's kind of inspired this way that I've been thinking about what I'm allowed to do and what is mine to share. And so I think I would love to have more experience in actual archives, but for now, I'm just going to make conceptual art about archives. Okay. No bad questions. It's okay. Yes?
Are you beginning to show that exhibition in full somewhere besides here? Or
Am I planning to?
your own exhibition around?
Am I planning to show this again somewhere in full? So right now, all of these pieces are tucked away under my bed. So I have no concrete plans yet, but I know that Jessup was very happy to host it. There's a place in Portland that may. I'm going back to New York soon, and maybe I can find a place there. For now, they're just gonna hang tight with me, but there's a very big possibility they can come back in the future. But you can still see them, of course, in the digital archives and on the magazines and such. For now. Okay.
Thank you, Joanna. Our next presenter is Chloe Meyer, who is originally from Churchville, Maryland. Chloe's senior project was an investigative study on the factors that influence bats' susceptibility to white nose syndrome in partnership with the Acadia National Park. This work has led to a scientific manuscript that she is preparing to publish. In July, Chloe is venturing off to Vancouver to pursue a Master of Science at the University of British Columbia, studying how carbon sequestration and agricultural land use impact endangered bat species. Please welcome Chloe.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today to talk to you about the physiological effects of white nose syndrome on the fitness of Myotis libii in Acadia National Park. I, like many other students, came to COA to study marine mammals. But the magic of plans changing is that things seem to fall into place. And I found myself as the Acadia Scholar in the summer of 2023. And the minute I held my first 4.8-gram bat, I fell in love. I became increasingly interested in how the populations of bats were being impacted by a fungus called white nose syndrome, which causes population decline. But let me orient you a little bit to my world of Acadia and bats. Spanning about 50% of Mount Desert Island, Acadia offers habitat for 8 species of bats, 3 of which we'll talk about today. I would like to introduce you to the northern long-eared bat, the little brown bat, and the eastern small-footed bat, 3 Myotis species. When I started my senior project, I initially wanted to explore wildlife immune responses to per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which you may have heard called PFAS or even forever chemicals. We sent 6 guano samples to the lab, but what we found was that only 1 bat tested positive for any type of PFAS. While this endeavor did not produce any significant results, it was an important exploration, as no one else has currently looked into PFAS in individual bats. So, like my diversion from the world of marine mammals, plans rarely work out, and I pivoted. I went back to my original fascinations of population status and decline. The red line here in between 2011 and 2012 denotes when white nose syndrome was first introduced to the bats in Acadia National Park. It caused an 85% decline of Myotis overall. This graph shows how all of the bats declined at the introduction of the fungus. However, one species of bat, the eastern small-footed bat, shown in purple, did not see the same dramatic declines as the other 2 species. This lack of decline in the eastern small-footed bat made me curious about what factors have allowed some populations of bats to persist more while others have declined so steeply. One of the major physiological impacts of white nose syndrome is that fat stores during hibernation are decreased due to an increase in metabolism when the fungus causes them to wake up during hibernation. The hypothesis I tested was the fitness of the ability to produce viable offspring decreases as the severity of white nose syndrome increases. With the physiological response, we used reproductive status as our indicator of fitness. We looked at body condition via weight, plus the year of capture, plus the fungal load, which we looked at both via white nose syndrome test results and looking at the condition of the wing, which indicates past infection. I ended up taking all of these different variables and running them in RStudio, a statistical analysis software, where I calculated the best fitting model to predict what would impact reproductive status the most. My y-axis is reproductive status. My x-axis is weight. And what we found with our model was that the best predictor of reproductive success was weight. So what does this mean? It means that pregnant bats are heavier because they are carrying a pup, which makes sense. Past studies suggest that bats return to the same weight after giving birth. But our study found that lactating and post-lactating bats, or bats that had pups that year, in Acadia were heavier than the non-reproductive ones. This may support the hypothesis that bats that have lost weight due to white nose syndrome may not be able to produce a pup that year. One alternative explanation is competitive release, which is the idea that as some populations decline, as they did in Acadia, others are able to increase due to increased resource availability. However, due to limited data and population counts, as well as time constraints, this is a hypothesis for a different day. And with that, I would like to thank everyone who has helped me through every aspect of this project. It truly takes a village. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm gonna get things started. What causes the white nose syndrome? What do we know about that?
Yeah, so it came to the US in 2006, and it was introduced in New York, and we're not quite sure where it originated from, but it occurs during hibernation, especially in cool, wet areas where they like to hibernate. It's a cold-loving fungus, and they have a lot of evaporative water loss during hibernation, and so they like to hibernate in more damp environments. And also because they're communal, they hibernate together, and it spreads through touch. Yeah.
Could you speak to the role of people in spreading different diseases?
Yeah, so there hasn't really been a lot of studies on if people are spreading white nose syndrome directly, but with climate change and having more variable weather, so like wetter winters or colder winters in some areas, that may play a role in increased spread of white nose syndrome, and also just changing roosting habitat and things like that. And you know, if you cut down all of the trees that the bats are roosting in, then you kind of push them together and consolidate them in other areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chloe. Next up, we have Noelle Stringer, hailing from Coatesville in the great state of Pennsylvania. Her senior project investigates the relativity of color perception through the use of both mathematics and art making. After COA, Noelle plans to return home to Pennsylvania, where she hopes to continue to make art and pursue her interest in math. Please welcome Noelle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Math and art have always felt the same to me. Maybe it's born out of the methodical process that I tend to use to approach both, or maybe it's just the fact that I feel equally passionate about each. But most of the time, this connection has felt somewhat intangible, something to be explored without fully expecting to grasp. My dual interests were part of what drew me to College of the Atlantic. I reveled in the idea that I didn't have to give up one or the other in pursuing a higher education, and was instead encouraged to explore this connection between the two. This exploration of interconnection has slowly become my senior project. Now, despite this being my senior project, its true origins date back years. My interest in both math and art individually had always been there, but it wasn't until the summer of 2023 that I decided to really lean into their connection. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma the spring of my second year at COA. After 3 months of chemo, I came back to Maine with a new perspective. I had spent the summer mostly bedridden, so when I finally came back with energy, it was like the buildup of desire for all the things that I couldn't do over that summer came crashing in all at once. That multiplied by the fact that I now understood that getting to do the things you love shouldn't be taken for granted. It was then that I began strategically planning my terms, such that I always had at least one math class and at least one art class at all times. That, and I redoubled my efforts of trying to find the connections between the two. This desire bled into my search for a topic to write my Goldwater Scholarship application on, which is when I found colorimetry, the science of mathematically identifying color and representing color perception. A part of colorimetry that really excited me was the relativity of color perception. The idea that how you perceive a color hue is dependent on the context in which it is viewed. This is a concept that has been widely documented and explored, whether in Albers colored boxes or in Yilmaz's lighting experiments. And I had even seen it at work in my own art, simply in trying to mix accurate colors for my paintings. But now, backed by the math, I wanted to push this idea to the extremes. So I set up a workstation in the closet of Studio 3, complete with spotlights of the primary light colors red, blue, and green. With this setup, I was able to explore the relationship of a lighting environment to color perception by adjusting the lighting context in order to discover a couple of perceptive effects the different lights had on the different pigments. The art pieces that I made as a result of this were each an experiment in their own right. I would notice something like a specific shift in value structure and then build a painting around this idea. So, for example, I explored how I could shift composition by mixing colors that appeared distinct under white light, but then would merge together under blue in order to reveal and conceal aspects of an image. I also experimented with animating a painting by noting what colors stood out under which lights and which ones receded, and then finding a set of 3 colors that, when rotating through red, green, and blue light, only one pigment would be visible at a time. Or I even just limited myself to only working on a painting under a blue light, such that it can only be seen in its true intended form in the right lighting conditions. These experiments were all bookended by my colorimetric research. I began by familiarizing myself with the current models of coding for color, and then moved on to researching a novel approach that identifies color through a quantum-like framework. The applications of this research included practical tests, such as developing a transform matrix to create a chromatic adaptation transform, or a CAT, in order to predict what the colors of my paintings would be across the different lights. This project has really been a celebration of my passions. For the past few months, I've just shown up to my closet and gotten to have fun messing around, experimenting and exploring whatever new thing that I stumble on that strikes my interest. It's funny how actively choosing to appreciate the opportunities that I have been gifted can lead to such beautiful, joyful play. I think anything can cause a shift in perspective, whether that's a life-changing event like having cancer or a simple flick of a light switch. Thank you, and if you're interested in seeing more, my project will be up in Studio 3 from 2 until 4 today, and you should all come around and check it out. So, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Recently, there's been some news coverage about a new color that some people can see and most can't. And I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so the question's about this new color that's been discovered. I haven't done a whole lot of research into it, but the whole idea that how people perceive any color is just such a wide range. Like, everyone's vision is different, I suppose. And the work that I did is very specific to my eyes in general, just because I'm the one looking at it and making decisions based on what I'm seeing. So similar ideas for this new color, where some people just have eyes in a way that is going to be able to perceive these things, and some people don't. And yeah, that's just the fascinating thing about colors. It's so variable. Thank you.
What comes as the match for the idea of the painting?
So the question's about how does the math connect to the paintings? So as part of this, one of the things that I focused the most on was this chromatic adaptation transform, which is talking about how a lighting environment affects how you perceive color, and then there's a code that you can do. It's a linear matrix transform that takes a color input and then predicts what the output is going to be under a certain illuminant. So with my art, a lot of it is based in, oh, here's a painting that looks one way under one light, and now it looks different under a new light. So this chromatic adaptation transform and the linear matrix thing takes the colors of my paintings and predicts what they'll be under the new lighting conditions. So I was working a lot on trying to develop that, because right now the current models for that really work best under like subtle shifts in lighting, like a white light to an off-white light, and I'm doing big shifts in lighting from like white to blue. So it's still a work in process, but that's the math I was focusing on. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Moving along, next we have Rahim Khador, who is originally from Great Selamiya, which is in Syria, for those of you that don't know. And Rahim is also one of our Davis Scholars. Rahim has focused his studies here at COA on pre-med and biomedical sciences, but his senior project is an initiative entitled Testimonies of Survival, a platform for restoration and justice in Syria. The project is a documentary and fundraising platform that centers on stories of Syrian prison survivors. The project aims to create testimony-based films for advocacy and fundraising to support freed political prisoners in Syria. After COA, Rahim plans to pursue a career as a heart surgeon. Please welcome Rahim.
Some of you are hearing me speak for the third time in the last 24 hours, and I bet you're just thrilled. So here we go. Thank you, Dom, for the kind introduction, and thank you all for being here today. Today, I want to take you with me on the journey of my senior project, Testimonies of Survival, a platform for justice and restoration in Syria. I come from Syria, and my hometown is this little city, slightly near the coast, called Salamiyya. If you knew me before today, you'll probably know that I have focused my time here at COA on pre-med studies. I dream of becoming a heart surgeon, and I came to COA determined to build a foundation strong enough to get into med school one day. Part of that, I entered at places like the Jackson Laboratory and MDI Hospital, and I really thought my senior project would just be another step in that exact same path, working in a laboratory or a hospital. But in December of last year, a major event happened back home that changed everything. After more than 50 years of dictatorship, and more than a decade of revolution, loss, and sacrifice, the Assad regime finally fell, and the country was freed. For decades, the regime had arrested and disappeared people for the smallest acts, joining a protest, taking a photo, helping a neighbor. One of the worst prisons they built was Sednaya, a place known for torture and executions. Survivors of Sednaya walked out damaged, physically and mentally, wounded, often with no family to help them. One of those who survived Sednaya during the revolution and before December is Omar al-Shugri. He was imprisoned as a teenager and tortured in Sednaya. And I'm truly honored to say that Omar is with us today, and he will be giving this year's commencement speech. Before I ever came to COA, my dad made me watch one of Omar's interviews. It stuck with me. I didn't know how, but I knew I wanted to do something to raise awareness about stories like Omar in the world. To try to find a way to tell those stories, I applied for a Project for Peace grant and was lucky to receive it. The goal of the grant is to document stories of survivors and utilize those stories to raise funds to support the survivors' healing and recovery. So the first step was a documentary. We interviewed Omar just a few weeks ago, and we're starting to work on a documentary based on his story and share his testimony with the world starting this week. We had our initial lunch at Real Pizza last night with a screening of the Work in Progress documentary and a panel discussion with Omar. We had a fantastic turnout, and we were all captivated by Omar's stories and his way of storytelling. To do the fundraising part, we needed a politically neutral nonprofit with the sole mission of supporting prison survivors in Syria. To do that, I was lucky to be accepted into the Hatchery program to prototype the fundraising part and start this nonprofit. I'm glad to share with you today that I was able to start Beyond Sednaya, and I'm going to be registering it as a 501c3 nonprofit based here in the US and particularly in Maine. To facilitate this work in Syria, we just rented a field office on the ground to run our operations and work with our partners. And I'm not doing this alone. I've never made a film before. I'm a pre-med kid, but I was lucky to bring together an incredible team. Filmmakers, editors, friends I met in high school and here at COA. And of course, my wonderful brother, who's with us as well today, who's a journalist based in Germany, and helped us make this project possible. We also had many people help us in the last minute to conduct this interview and travel all the way to Sweden, as travel issues arose with the current political climate, which made it difficult for me to travel outside the United States. But most importantly, I recruited our best volunteer, my dear mother. She's our operations director in Syria, overseeing the delivery of the funds and making sure everything reaches the people who need it. And generously, the only thing she asks for in return is that she's always named the Volunteer of the Month every single month. Coming up with a logo was not easy, and I struggled with finding names or thinking of a logo for weeks, until Maddie Pearson, who was with me in the hatchery and is presenting their work today, helped me create our official logo after many attempts and some hand modeling from my side. In many ways, this project reflects the core of a human ecology to me, responding to the world, not just with knowledge, but with care, adaptation, and action. Moving forward, I will continue balancing this work with my pursuit of medical school, because I see both paths as essential. Healing bodies and healing communities are not separate goals. They're part of the same vision for a just and free Syria. I'd like to end this presentation with a part of Umar's testimony.
And then they put me on the ground and they loaded their guns, and the officer said, aim. And then that takes me back in time to the first time when we were in a protest, and they loaded their guns, they aimed at us, and poof, shot. But this time I was seeing on the ground, I wasn't seeing anything. I was trying to imagine anything but the guard, because you don't want the last second of your life to be you imagining the guard who's killing you. I mean, you want something prettier than that. If you could imagine meeting your mom, or seeing the girl you loved, or a bird that, you know, I always loved taming birds and so on. And then when you're trying to, poof, and they shot. At that moment, everything ended. All the horrible things ended. All the suffering ended. All the pain ended. And the most beautiful thing was death didn't hurt.
I invite you all to join our efforts and follow our work at Beyond Sednaya and Rebuilding Lives to Rebuild Syria. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
When you chose to tell stories of survivors, did you think about telling stories of missing persons or disappeared persons, and like how did you make that choice, or how did you honor them in this?
Absolutely. That is part of our vision, to meet with families who have disappeared members and friends who have disappeared friends, and we want to interview these people. But as the transition is going on in Syria, we wanted to do a project that is based outside Syria as things settle in Syria. So our next part is hopefully a trip to Syria over the summer, interviewing survivors there and interviewing family members as well. Any other questions? Go ahead, Ben. Absolutely. So best question is, how are we going to decide who to help? I'm working with facilities in Syria that provide direct support to people, medical providers, mental health facilities, humanitarian organizations, and those people and those organizations have wait lists, long wait lists of people that need help. And so I'm going to rely on their knowledge and on their work to make sure to understand exactly who need these funds. And we made our estimates after these conversations to be $1,000 to help one survivor through this transition period. And luckily, we received our first donation, our pledge for a donation from COA board member to support one survivor through this transition period. And so those funds will be used on case-by-case basis, whether it goes to psychological support or medical support, with shelter and food being essential part of using those funds. So I'm going to rely on our partners on the ground and on my mother, hopefully, to make good decisions. Thank you.
right, thank you, Raheem. Before we get to our next presentation, we're going to take a short break, which should be about 5 minutes. So go ahead, get up, stretch, go to the bathroom, do what you need to do, and in 5 minutes, I'll see you right back here, same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you. I'll do it. No problem. I know I look like I'm in charge, but I have to wait for someone who's way above me. All right, there we go. I got the go ahead. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got some moving and shaking going on, and hopefully we're ready to continue. Our next presentation comes courtesy of Kaya Douglas, hailing all the way from Peterborough, Ontario. For her senior project, she created a solo performance entitled How to Dodge a Ram, in which she gnawed on David Hubert's story collection, Chemical Valley, looking for curious pockets of contaminated life amid this unhinged, ever-decaying world. In her lecture turned eulogy turned autobiographical clown show, we enter the inside of a blender where pickup trucks, fish, fever dreams, half-baked songs, and your grandma's to-do lists go to melt in the inevitable swamp. This summer, Kaya looks forward to canoeing with her family and reconnecting with the theater community in her hometown. Take it away, Kaya.
One of the last conversations I had with my grandma, she said, Kaya, it's too bad that you didn't go to law school, 'cause you've always been so logical. And I said, Grandma, you're right, the audiences of my solo performances also describe my work as logical. But hey, I'm so sorry, I'm not gonna go to law school. Why is it important that I go to law school? She said, well, everyone who's ever done anything important with their life has gone to law school. But Grandma, you've always been such a supporter of the arts. You inspired me to love the theater. Do you remember Murray Schafer, that famous experimental composer from Toronto? And she said, yes, Kaya, of course I remember Murray Schafer. He's a very influential, very important experimental composer. Did I mention he's from Toronto? Well, Grandma, I'm composing music too. I am inspired by the work of Murray Schafer. Do you think that Murray Schafer went to law school to learn how to compose a cappella vocal scores based on the shape of the snowdrifts outside his window? And she said, Kaya, you bring up a good point. You know, Murray Schafer was pretty important. So that can only mean one thing. It's that Murray Schafer must have gone to law school. Well, my grandma is not with us in the same way anymore, and I've been thinking about what she said, and I think she had a point, because if I had gone to law school, maybe I would know how to argue with her rock solid logic. Hi, everyone. This is the poster that I made to advertise my senior project. And I'm about to give you the exceedingly logical and chronological story of how this project came to be. Now, this is me performing in my first play. Soon after this, on a canoe trip with my family, I write my first song. And this is a song that's about keeping the environment clean, and it's also about ducks that stick their butts in the air. And it goes like this. I'll go outside and I get some soap and I wash the grass. Bums up, baby, bums up. With my 4-year-old brother earnestly on air guitar. Now fast forward. I'm 17 years old with a giant crush on my summer camp coworker, and his nickname is Dodge Ram. And at the first staff party, what's happening? There we go. At the first staff party, me and Dodge Ram make out on the couch very intensely. And afterwards, my friends were teasing me. They're like, so Kaya, are you gonna dodge the ram, or are you gonna ram the Dodge? And I was like, probably gonna ram the Dodge. Yeah. I don't have a slide to illustrate that. And also, Dodge Ram ignored me for the rest of the summer. In 2020, I start working as an industrial tree planter, and amid the massive clear cuts, I think about how we need to love the spaces that are contaminated and industrialized. Around this time, I meet up again with that guy, Dodge Ram, and we do end up ramming the Dodge, so to speak, in the back of his car, which is not a Dodge Ram. Clear. Again, no slide for that. During my second year at COA, I attend the UN biodiversity negotiations in Montreal. And I see how they focus primarily on preserving the idea of pristine landscapes, but fail to address how we actually live together in places contaminated by extractive industry. And then I take a clown class taught by Donna Oblongata. And then I read this book called Chemical Valley, which is a series of short stories that look at our contaminated entanglements and chemical refineries. And then I see this solo show in New York City by a contemporary clown artist named Alex Tatarsky, and the show is called Sad Boys in Harpy Land. In February of last year, my grandmother has a medically assisted death. During her last few days, she changes her mind about me going to law school because she decides through the process of dying that lawyers are actually annoying and uptight. Anyways, and her last words are, put it on your to-do list. In August of last year, I get run over by a truck. Now, this is not just any old truck, okay? This is a... You know it. This is a Dodge Ram truck. My collarbone gets crushed, and they put me back together with a titanium rod. So I start thinking again about what it means to live in a contaminated body. At this point, I start working on creating a solo performance for my senior project. In November last year, my Mormor died. Now, she used to be the best storyteller ever, but she couldn't really say too much for the last 6 years because of a stroke. And her last words are Texas and rodeo. In his short story titled Swamp Things, David Hubert considers, we can't purge or clean up all this filth, but maybe we can bend it into new ways of making. How to Dodge a Ram is my response to Hubert's invitation. I performed this hour-long solo work for 3 nights earlier this term. And you know, in the end, it really was all about to-do lists. I want to say thank you to everyone who supported and challenged me through this process. Solo work is really not so solo after all. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Are you going to take it on the road?
I would like to. I'm going home, and I really want to reconnect with theater makers back home, and so I would really like to bring it back into rehearsal a little bit with a director that's not me. I need a director that is not me. And and do another run at home. And yeah, I mean, on the road, it's a pretty simple set, so I feel like it might be able to fit into my bike panniers and do a little trip around different metropolises of southern Ontario, and yeah, bring it on the road. Or maybe because there is a raft as part of the set, so maybe I should take it on the river road and just like raft in my inflatable pool floaty, right? Take it on the road that way. Yeah.
Have you read Whoopi Goldberg's memoir?
I've not.
I encourage you to.
Okay.
Because it sounds like your grandmas and her mother might have met up someplace at the university for, and totally encouraged her. And the Whoopi Goldberg, the EGOT human that she is, begun with some great words like that, and she went on and created a solo show that brought her to the rest of us.
Thank you. Okay, I'll be putting that on the summer reading list. The to-do list. Damn, you guys know my show better than I do. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kaya. Our next presenter is Jade Tyra. Raised in Oklahoma with a background in farming, she has always been driven by an interest in horticulture and the narratives of plant life. Through her research project, Jade has assembled the most comprehensive history to date of the Beatrix Farron Design Garden on COA's campus. She hopes to continue this project, and she also hopes that it could lay the groundwork for future restoration efforts. Jade works as a gardener on MDI for a company called The Secret Gardens, and she plans to continue setting down roots here as this project and many others continue to grow and evolve. Please welcome Jade.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you all so much for sharing a piece of your time with me and this story today. I'm sure many, if not all of you, have found yourselves in the garden behind Tab, one which was initially designed for the Guy's Cliff Estate. This was COA's first academic building that tragically burned in 1983. I have worked in the COA garden since I came to this school, and while working here full-time last summer, I did a deep dive into what records of this garden were already held by the institution in preparation for a potential tour. To my surprise, COA knew very little, but the importance of this garden started to fill my thoughts. COA's head gardener and my mentor, Barbara Myers, had long let me know that she had really hoped for somebody to take on the task of mapping this garden's story. And so with generous guidance from Barbara, my research began. This garden was designed and implemented by Beatrix Farron. She was the only woman among founding members of the American Society of Landscape Architects, and her design work shaped iconic gardens at Yale, Vassar, Princeton, the White House, Dumbarton Oaks in Washington, D.C., and many more. But her influence also runs deep here in Maine. Farron spent much of her life on MDI, and she played a crucial role in shaping the early plantings and trail systems of Acadia. She worked closely with park planners, helped advise on native plant species, and played, and she helped ensure that the park's built elements blended harmoniously with the natural landscape. But her legacy is not just about beauty. It is about the way that designed spaces can respect and amplify the character of place. This philosophy is also present in the garden that she designed at our college. Over time, this garden has faded quietly into the background. It's easy to pass by without realizing what it once was or what it could be. Over the past year, I've met with gardeners, Farron scholars, landscape designers, and some of COA's founding and long-term staff and faculty. I traveled to Dumbarton Oaks in Washington. Oh, something happened to my slides. I traveled to Dumbarton Oaks in Washington, D.C. Okay. One of the largest surviving Farron gardens, by invitation from the director, Jonathan Cavalier. Together, these conversations have pieced an understanding not only of what the garden looked like, but of how it is aligned with Farron's style, how it was cared for, adapted, and sometimes forgotten. I've also done extensive archival research, digging into planting plans, photographs, oral histories. I worked with landscape architect Isabel Mancinelli to find a set of slides from the 1930s. And then Elliot Santavica, the archivist in the library, and I digitized these. I'm pleased to show them to you today. As you can see, there are some mysterious elements. This pool and its placement remain the biggest mystery. In conversations with Miller Doherty, we discerned that it was likely part of this garden was destroyed while under the purview of the Oblate Fathers, those who owned this land before COA. This pool and its placement remain our biggest mystery, but I will also share with you a photo of what is now in the location where we believe the majority of this lost terrace once was. After extensive digging and conversations with archivists around the country, a box was found in the UC Berkeley archive containing documents relating to this Farrand garden from Farrand herself. This had never been viewed before, and due to a generous donation from gardener Brenda Less, who has been heading the restoration of the last garden that Farrand designed before her death, Garland Farm, we were able to acquire these materials. I'm thrilled to unveil them to you today. A piece of history recently uncovered and one that has not been revisited in a very long time. These documents will now be available for public access in the Thorndike Archive, along with all of the other stacks of documents that I have acquired. Beginning in 1980, a restoration of the space took place to spruce it up after the fire. This project was led by Patrick Chassé of Landscape Design Associates. Pat planted new roses in the bottom terrace along with sections of privet hedge, and some walls and basic ironwork were temporarily patched. I'm sure that a conversation with Pat could have unveiled so much, and sadly, due to illness, I never had the chance to speak with him. A planned final phase of this restoration never came to fruition, nor did the financial prioritization of continued maintenance, which at the time had been assured. There also were no further wall repairs, which at the time had been expected to last only 5 years. Since then, there has been no significant work on restoring or repairing any element of this garden. Given what we now know, another restoration effort can begin, one with a clearer image of what was originally here and how that has changed over time. This is a garden which without effort will slip away from us. I plan to continue living and gardening on this island, and as I have formed a close bond with this space in particular, I would love to see its walls preserved and the air of Farrand style brought back to life within them. If you're interested in learning more, viewing any of these documents in greater detail, I know that the lines are quite small, or if you're interested in collaborating with me on this project in some way moving forward, please reach out to me. Thank you so much, and I will take any questions. Yes?
Can you talk about what her style was generally?
Mhm.
And two, did it consist of plants that are local to Maine?
It's a great question. I was asked about if Beatrix Farrand's plants are local to Maine and also generally about her design style. I think that Beatrix Farrand really tried to create spaces that blurred edges. She often hid corners of walls to give the illusion that the garden continued past what you could already see. She was trying to create containers of space that really invited you to wander and get lost a little bit. In terms of her plantings, there's a myriad of listings of her plants, and she often tried to meet the needs and desires of the client that she was working with, which leads to different results. The bottom terrace of the garden that we have here was originally planted with hybrid tea roses, which are quite difficult to maintain and probably wouldn't meet the needs of COA. So I think that in envisioning a restoration effort, we also need to think about what plants should go in a space that is run by a college and how that would shift from her original plans. But I think that also bringing in those new native plant species that maybe wouldn't have been as crucial to her original plans in some ways does amplify her vision because it's meeting the needs of the people and the space that is there now. Yeah, thank you.
What would be some of the first steps you've done for all of this work? What would be the first steps that the college might take?
I think that The unfortunate truth of this type of work is that it does require funding. And so I do hope to continue seeking out that funding. And the first thing that I would put that money towards are wall repairs, because these walls are very indicative of Beatrix Farron's style. And they also are walls that local masons look at and feel in awe of how they have lasted this long. So to let those continue to crumble, to me, feels a great disservice, not only to Beatrix Farron's legacy, but to this beautiful resource that we have at the school. So my hope would be to see those walls repaired as soon as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jade. Following Jade, we have Anna Heiding, who is from Germany, and her senior project is a research project on an alternative approach to advisory services for farmers, for which she worked together with farmers in Germany. After graduating from COA, Anna will go back home to do an internship in a landscape architecture planning office and apply for grad school in the field of landscape architecture. Please welcome Anna.
Thank you for the introduction. As you just heard, I'm from Germany, and for my senior project, I chose to go back home. My hometown is located in the semi-rural Lower Rhine region, which you see nestled up to the German-Dutch border. And here I grew up on a conventional dairy farm that's run by my family. In these pictures, you see me taking care of some young calves, something I've done frequently growing up and still do when I come back home. While I grew up, I often heard my parents talk about their interactions with the agricultural advisory services. Advisors have frequently told my parents to keep more cows and not to raise male calves on the farm, since they didn't believe that we could make money like this. Many agents have this one type of advice that they gave all the farmers, not really looking at the specific situation of each farm. Ever since, I've asked myself how advisory services might tie in more realistically with farmers' lives. For context, in Germany, farmers operate within a larger network of educational institutions and advisory services that are responsible for education, applied research, and consultation. These services are all commonly referred to as extension services. And for a long time, and especially during the Green Revolution, extension agents were supposed to just transfer the latest discoveries of science into agricultural practice to increase farmers' production and feed the world. This top-down approach has often led to tensions between the real needs of farmers and the demands from the world around them, because it mostly focused on solutions with a high technology input to increase yields. Recently, though, farmers have demanded more and more for a participatory approach to extension that is controlled bottom-up and primarily serves farmer interests. One such approach is the stable school developed by the Danish Dr. Mette Vast after she got to know and worked with the farmer field schools in Uganda. The stable school is a group extension model based on this experience and adapted to a Danish context. This approach really makes the farmers' decisions central to advising. In a small group, farmers focus on a specific problem that they aim to find custom solutions for by visiting each other's farms over the course of the year and 2 times over the course of 1 year. This process is also supported by a facilitator. And each of these meetings is prepared in a short meeting between the hosting farmer and the facilitator, in which the host sets the agenda. Once everybody is on the host farm, the farm tour gives the participants an overview of the whole operation, followed by a short coffee break. Then the host shares their goals for the farm, and together they review the problems that the hosting farmer is facing. All of the visiting farmers recommend actions to be taken to solve these problems. And then the host actually commits him or herself to a specific action which they will aim to implement until the next meeting on their farm. I thought this concept was very intriguing, and reading about the success it has had in Denmark and Europe overall, I decided that I wanted to do this at home. I found a group of 6 farmers of 4 farms in the region who actually volunteered to participate. And in the summer of 2024, we focused on improving calf health on these farms. Here we are during the farm tour looking at a heifer that will give birth soon. And in the second round that happened this last winter, we discussed employee management over some coffee and bread. At the end of all of this, I interviewed each farmer to find out what they thought about this whole process. And this graph shows you on the y-axis the number of recommended actions, and on the x-axis the degree to which the actions were implemented. The actions are put into different categories according to the problem area that they're related to. We can see that this approach resulted in a very high adoption rate for the summer round on CAP Health, since every farmer decided to do something about their problem areas. Same goes for the round last winter on employee management. For this round, we have much more actions to be done in the near future category, since the participants did not have as much time to implement these actions before I came to interview them. The farmers attributed the success to the exchange of experience within the stable stool group, the openness among the participants, the small group size, and the joint development of practical and customized solutions. At the end, I created a brochure to report on the results of this project, and in a Zoom meeting, the farmers and I shared the success of this project with representatives of the Chamber of Agriculture. After this meeting, they allowed me to publish a short summary of the project in the farmer newsletter. And we really hope that this will spread an interest in this type of extension among farmers and also spark new views on the role of extension agents in advising at the Chamber of Agriculture. And lastly, I thank everybody who was involved in this and ask if you have any questions for me. Yeah, I mean, this presentation couldn't encompass everything that I looked at, and that was a big part of my project actually, how to adapt this model or this approach to my region and what would fit or suit the needs of the farmers best. And yeah, it's very specific things about the process and the timeline that I showed you. What do we talk about during the farm tour, or when do we follow up on this, or how do you commit to a specific action? Yeah. So that's what we would change in the next, yeah. Anyone else up there? Yes.
I would just imagine that this would be around the world, this could take place, because you've got people in similar territories, obviously experiencing things, but possibly not sharing the information.
Yeah, so what's the question exactly?
Do you imagine this maybe going around the world and becoming a means for farmers to communicate?
So the question is whether this could expand around the world. And the model itself it is being done all over Europe, and I assume also other places. And the farmer field schools are all over Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa in practice. And I think considering that you adapt the model to the specific place and the customs of that place, yes, it can spread all around the world. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Anna. Next up, we have Lucy Dabbs, who grew up on Denman Island in Canada. Her senior project is an animated video that communicates the problem with plastic and is made entirely of plastic that she collected from trash on the side of the road. After graduation, Lucy will take time off to travel and apply for an animation mentorship with the National Film Board of Canada. Please welcome Lucy.
Hi everyone, thank you for the warm welcome. Before coming to COA, I took a gap year. I was running down the road in my neighborhood when I spotted a piece of plastic trash. I stopped to pick up this plastic, and then I saw another piece, and another, and another. And by the end of that run, I had collected more than 400 pieces of trash. With this plastic, I made my first ever stop-motion animation. When I came to COA, I continued picking up plastic and making animations. I took both of the animation classes by Nancy Andrews, and then I became her teaching assistant to continue learning more. So, fast forward to my senior project, I decided to make an animation about the plastic problem. I picked up 1,727 pieces of plastic from about 10 times visiting Eden Street, between here and the Acadia Visitor Center. Then I created a short animation, which took about 200 hours. And then, as part of the project, I also completed a brand audit, which identifies the companies who produce these products. I learned about brand audits during a program in Japan through COA, where we studied microplastics on an island called Osaki Kamijima in the south of Japan. And then I didn't want to just throw all of this plastic away, so I decided to make 16 eco-bricks, which I learned about during my internship in Costa Rica. So these are about 12 of the eco-bricks that I made, and this is about 2 full trash cans full of trash. Eco-bricks can be used in building projects and as furniture, but honestly, they're not a very practical solution because it takes up to 5 hours to make just 1 bottle eco-brick. The real problem is that plastic is an unnecessary product sold to us by these companies. These are all of the brands that I identified in the brand audit, 283. I submitted all of this data to a global database by Break Free from Plastic, which they submit a report every year identifying the main companies. So these are the parent companies of all of those brands. If there's one thing I noticed picking up all of this trash, it's that there's a lot of greenwashing done to convince us that plastic is recyclable. But even if plastic is recyclable, it's still going to inevitably end up in the environment, either in a landfill or burned into the atmosphere. So with that, I would love to show you the animation that I made.
Huh? What?
thank you very much, and I'll take any questions now. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was if I'm showing the film in any festivals or environmental festivals. So I've only submitted to one film festival so far, and it's a combination of like science and animation, which is based in France. So I've submitted to that festival, and I'm currently looking for others. I've learned that it can be very expensive to submit films to festivals because there is a fee, but I might be reaching out to some of them to see if I can have those fees waived or other ways that I can get this film out there to people. But yeah, question?
How have you engaged with any of the companies there? Many of these companies have chief sustainability officers.
Yes.
And maybe putting it on YouTube and engaging with them may give them an opportunity to rethink their packaging supply chains.
Yeah, so the question was how have I engaged or can I plan to engage with these companies to hold them more accountable, because a lot of them do have chief sustainability officers who claim to care about their sustainable goals. So yeah, in the end of that film, one of the options, the place where I submitted the brand audit data, they break free from plastic. They encourage people to send all the trash that they collect back to those companies physically. And I chose not to do that because I thought they were just going to throw it away, and I really wanted to make something with it, so I made these eco-bricks. But there are other ways to engage with them. I think the data that I submitted will really be helpful in contributing to the report they publish every year, which kind of calls out those main contributors. But in terms of other ways, I think actually the importance of the film to me is in raising awareness about who is really responsible for this problem. A lot of the times when we see this trash, we ourselves feel guilty as consumers for kind of like littering and buying these products that are covered in plastic, but that really puts the burden onto us when really those who are responsible are the people producing it, because vast majority of what I picked up didn't need to be plastic. It could have been made out of wood, out of glass, out of many other materials. So it's just cheaper and easier for these companies to be putting things in plastic, and I wanted the public to kind of shift their mindset towards blaming these companies and kind of like boycotting if you can, or other ways that consumers can kind of see who's responsible. But yeah, I'm curious if anybody has other suggestions about how we can hold them accountable. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Our next presenter is Hazy Maurer from the suburbs of Chicago. For her senior project, Communicating Science, HPAI, and Acadia National Park, she worked with Acadia to create public communications about highly pathogenic avian influenza and how it impacts the park. After she leaves COA, she plans to work as a station manager at College of the Atlantic's Alice Eno Field Research Station. Please welcome Hazy.
Thank you. Science is a critical part of human ecology and the modern world. However, it's notoriously difficult to communicate to the public. But it's important for people other than scientists to understand. Especially when it comes to things like avian influenza, the focus of this project, where people are already being directly impacted, and public health information is increasingly hard to come by. The story of my project begins at the Alice Eno Field Research Station on Great Duck Island, where I did my internship last summer. I spent the summer living in the middle of a seabird colony, sharing the island with herring and great black-backed gulls, black guillemots, common eiders, and Atlantic puffins. These birds are all at high risk of contracting HPAI, or bird flu. As a part of my work on Great Duck, I was assisting on a project in collaboration with Acadia National Park and Friends of Acadia to monitor for HPAI on some of Acadia's offshore islands with seabird nesting colonies. But before I get too far into that, what even is HPAI? HPAI stands for highly pathogenic avian influenza, which is a type of bird flu that causes high mortality rates in nearly all bird species that contract it. You may have heard of the HPAI type H5N1, which has recently been spreading throughout the United States as well as the rest of the world. This H5N1 strain was first observed in the US in December of 2021 and began to jump to mammals by the following spring. The disease has been circulating through chicken and cattle throughout the US, and more recently, has been causing infections in humans who work closely with these animals. The disease cannot currently spread from person to person, and symptoms are typically mild, often consisting of conjunctivitis and cold symptoms, although there has been one confirmed death in the US in an immunocompromised elderly man. HPAI has hit seabirds particularly hard. The disease has caused mass die-off events on seabird nesting islands. Current accepted knowledge puts HPAI at a near 100% mortality rate for these birds. Because our seabirds are at such high risk of contracting HPAI, as well as spreading it as they travel from their closely packed breeding colonies to their wintering grounds along the Atlantic coast, it's important that we understand both where the virus is and how the birds are moving. Besides me, the monitoring project on Acadia Islands was headed up by some of my peers, Autumn Pauley, Katie Hall, and Marina Schnell. The rest of the Great Duck Island crew assisted with this work throughout the season as well. At each island, we swabbed birds to test for active HPAI infection. Of the birds we tested, there were no active cases. However, a very important thing to remember about birds is that they can fly. Herring gulls from Acadia disperse up and down the Atlantic coast. This means our birds are interacting with a lot of other birds from a lot of different places. So, to get a better idea of where our birds are going, we also deployed GPS tags to track the movements of the gulls. This particular bird, banded and GPS tagged on Shabby Island, made it as far as North Carolina. As the gulls come back this summer, it's important to continue to monitor for HPAI as well, since just because it wasn't here last year doesn't mean it won't show up this year brought in from somewhere else. Acadia National Park is a great place to be a bird, but in addition to the crowds of birds flocking to the park to breed, humans also flock to Acadia every summer, which means there's a lot of potential interaction between people and birds possibly infected with HPAI. Because of this, it's important that visitors know how to safely interact with the birds. This is where my hard work started. I began by meeting with communications staff from Acadia National Park, Schoodic Institute, and Friends of Acadia to find out what mode of communication would be most helpful for them. Then I did a lot of research and worked on creating an article for Acadia National Park's website, which educates visitors on HPAI and recommends steps they can take to help, such as reporting sick or dead birds to the park, giving wildlife space, and reporting band numbers to help track bird movements. I also constructed a website for the Alice Eno Field Research Station on Great Duck Island, which has information on all of the research going on at the station, including HPAI, as well as a band reporting form, which allows us to track bird movements using field-readable color bands, which is important information for understanding possible disease vectors. I chose this work as my senior project because it was important to me to do something that would make an impact outside of COA. Communicating these things has the potential to positively impact the health of visitors to Acadia, as well as the birds that I care so much about. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
What's it like to spend a summer on Great Duck?
What's it like to spend a summer on Great Duck? What a wonderful question. It's absolutely magical. You literally are right in the middle of the herring gull colony, so our house is surrounded by nests of birds, and we do a lot of work with the nesting gulls, so there's a lot of holding of cute, cuddly chicks, as you can see here, and spending a lot of time up in the lighthouse watching the birds from up there as well. And it's such a great opportunity and such a wonderful part of my experience here at COA. Yeah?
Is the park and the Schoodic area going to continue, or are they going to expand on the information that you provided to give visitors some more explicit instruction about self-care around this?
Yeah, so the question is if the park is going to do any further work in this area. We will continue the monitoring of these islands this next summer. There was a little bit of a question with funding there, but we have the funding, so we'll be doing that this summer. In terms of public messaging, there has been a lot going into that around HPAI in the park and also with Schoodic Institute and Friends of Acadia, so I'm sure that will continue. I don't really have any specifics on how that will work, and of course, it's always changing, so things will change as the virus evolves. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hazy. And our final presentation for the 2025 senior class comes from Maddie Person. She grew up in southern Maine, and her project is a body of experimental ceramics entitled Living Memory. This collection of wares is inspired by land relationships, ancestral memory, and elder loss. After COA, Maddie plans to continue strengthening her arts community and land relationships in Maine, as well as travel via residencies and other work exchange programs. Please welcome Maddie.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for being here. My senior project was inspired by the death of my grandfather. His death was impactful for me as he was my last living grandparent, and I built this urn for him. And after, I found myself feeling deeply inspired by the ways ceramics record memories. I wanted to make a ceramic project to help me process the death of my elders and the loss of cultural memory. To begin, I decided to retrace my grandfather's Italian ancestry. I researched how my family came to this land and the colonial structures they were operating within. To gain a deeper understanding, I decided to travel to southern Italy to collect inspiration for this work. During my 3 months of travel, I learned language and I worked closely with the land. I spent most of my time living off-grid in the mountains, pruning olive trees on a small homestead. I learned local plant medicine from my host, who was the steward over these trees. Olive trees are ancient beings. They exist as trees because of the relationships humans have with them. They hold stories in their skin. Their roots have been on the land since my ancestors were there too. I also found myself gathering wild clay from the places that I visited. During my travels, I collected imagery that sparked my fascination. I compiled it into this image, which I then used to print decals for my ceramics. Upon my arrival home, I began playing with forms and patterns. I was inspired by chaotic math and the duality between organic and geometric. I found myself honoring the trees at my family's home. I pressed clay in decaying stumps to capture the memory of their lives. I made around 40 dishes of this kind. For example, the interior of this dish holds the tree rings, its story, while the outside is pressed with the plants that were growing around the transforming stump. I wood-fired some of my ceramics. This firing process is long and labor-intensive, but I was interested in the metaphysicality and the intimacy of using wood as an energy source. The dispersal and sharing of my work became a vital aspect of this project. Sharing art, for me, is about creating reciprocal relationships. Here is a print that I made of a fallen oak tree. I used this slab of clay, and I made 177 individual charms. The pieces have been dispersed among my friends, family, and community. And the original piece is decaying, but its memory lives on in the hands of many. I made a wide range of objects, but they were all connected by intention. I like getting a little metaphysical. The clay ball in this photo is foraged from the birthplace of my great-grandfather. The dish that it is sitting in is glazed with clay foraged from the death place of his son, and wood ash from the trees that my father harvests for our wood stove. This glaze also happens to line the inside of my grandfather's urn, and it is sitting in one of my geometric pieces. These geometric pieces, as I said, are inspired by chaotic tiling. These two shapes create non-repeating patterns, and a part of my final exhibition was seeing how my guests rearrange them into new patterns. My goal is to use this work to foster intergenerational spaces for meal sharing, creative community building, and healing conversations about our relationships to the land and the histories that we carry within us. I'd like to thank Neeraj for his patience and support while directing this project, to my Italian host, Daniele, for sharing his plant wisdom with me, to Julie for holding space for me in her garden, to Running with Scissors for providing the ceramic facilities to complete this project, and to my grandparents, and lastly, to the trees. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
What do you imagine the life of the trees showed you as you began to work with them?
The question was, how did I imagine the life of trees, as I was working with them? Trees are still observers. They're very grounded and rooted and connected to a place. It's just in their nature. And working with dead and decaying trees and fallen trees, you were able to see time captured in one moment. As you look at their rings, you can see just how each year was for the tree, and they are the physical manifestation of memory. And so, yeah, I think I get to experience a breadth of time in one moment, and that, I think that was the most important aspect. Thanks.
A question about the people urn that you made. Would you tell us about your idea, how you came up with that idea?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. The question was about how I came up with the idea for my grandfather's urn. So not pictured, I didn't really photograph it much. I'm sure my family has some more photographs than me. For me, it didn't quite feel right. And I have maybe 2 photos. And I didn't really show it until this year. It was like a year and a half before I felt comfortable showing it in this setting. But it was really a grieving process making it. I feel like creation is really an outlet for me of understanding my experience of the world. And so there was a lot of, just because of cultural norms in the US and our relationships with elders, with capitalism and colonialism being so pungent, there's a really strong disconnect in care. And so I felt like I was removed from his transition because I was here in school doing my life and far away and wasn't there, and our economic structures and systems don't compensate in-home elder care and that closeness of family. And so I held this burden in me, and I really wanted to be able to, creating a vessel to transition him to his next life was really important for me. And so even just making the vessel, that was the most important thing in my head, was trying to hold him in that space. There's a portrait on one side of him on his wedding day, and but I embossed it with grasses and seeds, wheat, and wind. I'm giving a lot of details, but we think of my grandmother as the wind. And so the wind was blowing the grasses and sort of carrying him, which was beautiful in my head. But yeah, thank you for that question. That was really lovely. And yeah, thanks.
Okay, before we wrap up, we have one more final order of business that is again way above my pay grade, so I would like to welcome our chair of the board, Beth, and our registrar, Crystal, to come do something very fancy.
Thanks, Beth. Trustees, I am honored to present to you the names of the candidates for graduation from the College of the Atlantic. As registrar of the college, I hereby certify that these 73 candidates have met all of the requirements for the Bachelor of Arts degree in Human Ecology, and that these 3 candidates who have also met all of the requirements for their Master's of Philosophy degree in Human Ecology.
Congratulations to all of our...
Okay, well, that about does it for us this morning. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance. I'd like to thank a bunch of names, so bear with me here for a second. I'd like to thank Dan and Reagan. I'd like to thank Zach and his crew for the lighting and the audio-visual stuff that's way, again, more complicated than I can handle. I'd like to thank you, Jody and Kara. Thank you to Cora and Kara. Thank you to Steering. And, of course, thank you and congratulations to all of my fellow seniors who will be walking with me across the stage tomorrow. Another round of applause for them and their hard work and their accomplishments. Yes, yes. All right. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, that's all for us for today. So I'll see you all later. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the weekend. Thank you so much. Take care.